Welcome to Strangers and Pilgrims. This is a UK-based Christian podcast to encourage the saints in the days of our pilgrimage. My name's Mike. I am a teacher of teachers and I live in the Black Country in the West Midlands. And this is my good friend Stephen. Stephen, do you want to introduce yourself?
Certainly will. My name is Stephen White. I'm a second-hand book dealer, father of 6, married to my wonderful wife, Layla. We live in Bradford in West Yorkshire, which you sort of get used to. And then when you go to other places, you come back to Bradford, you're like, it's pretty weird here. So, we went to Leeds and you're like, oh, is this what a city's supposed to be like? And then you come
What's weird about Bradford?
It's everything. Like, it's...
Okay.
It's,
I've been to Leeds as well. I like Leeds.
Yeah.
Bradford feels very kind of higgledy-piggledy. It doesn't seem to have, it doesn't seem to have much like anybody planned it in any way.
It's absolutely no planning to it whatsoever, other than like in the 60s and 70s, the council planned to destroy as much of the nice stuff as possible.
Okay.
That seems to be the only plan.
Okay.
Fortunately, they didn't have enough money to ruin everything. So there is that aspect of it. It is a weird place. It's not a very planned city by any means. So the city centre is very sort of hodgepodge things all put together, new projects, old beautiful buildings, right next to modern brutalist eyesores, like literally right next to each other. It's very
what's it famous for?
Well, it was famous for wool. Wool and worsted was Bradford's thing. Nice. It was the wool capital of the world. Like in the mid 1850s, it was like, I think it was the richest city in Europe.
Wow.
When Lister Mill was built, it had the largest indoor floor area of any building in the world.
Oh, wow. Okay.
But it peaked early.
Yeah. Sure.
I know it's been on a long, steady
from its ascendancy. Yeah.
Downhill ever since. Yeah. And it's like, it's weird in that, like, there's dry stone walls, like within a mile
in the city
of the city centre itself. You'll be driving between like urban, and then you'll just come to a field with some horses in it. And then you're back into tall buildings.
But it's a bit like that here, as you know, in the Black Country.
Yeah.
Every now and again, you turn a corner and there's a pony in a field.
Yeah.
Looking bedraggled.
Yeah. So it's a weird old place, but it's home.
Lovely.
We love it to some extent, even though we'd move to the country at the drop of a hat if we could.
Absolutely.
But maybe
not on Ilkley Moor, because obviously it'd be Bartat.
Yeah, but it's expensive out there as well, which is probably what we'll get onto. So anyway, I'm going to give a reading and then introduce the topic of our episode today. So I'm going to read from Titus chapter 2, and we'll read the first few verses. But speak thou the things which become sound doctrine, that the aged men be sober, grave, temperate, sound in faith, in charity, in patience. The aged women likewise, that they be in behaviour as becometh holiness, not false accusers, not given to much wine, teachers of good things, that they may teach the young women to be sober, to love their husbands, to love their children, to be discreet, chaste, keepers at home, good, obedient to their own husbands, that the word of God be not blasphemed. Young men likewise exhort to be sober-minded, in all things showing thyself a pattern of good works, in doctrine showing uncorruptness, gravity, sincerity, sound speech, that cannot be condemned, that he that is of the contrary part may be ashamed, having no evil thing to say of you. So basically, we had a conversation at work today. I just wanted to expand it or re-go over some of the things here, get your input on it. And the gist of the conversation was, we started about like mental illness and drugs, but really we got on to what it's like for young people to live and exist in the UK today. So I'm thinking particularly sort of 18 to 25-year-olds, 16 to 25-year-olds, that sort of thing. So you work in a sector that sees a lot of these young people. That cohort, we're 5 years on now, so they would have been like 11 to 20 the time of the lockdowns. My instinct is that there are many problems with that age bracket. And that they've been handed a very raw deal.
Agreed.
And so I just thought it'd be interesting to talk about, like, what's our analysis of the situation they're in, but also, is there any hope? Is there any advice that the scriptures can offer that isn't just sort of condescension, ignorance, or arrogance towards them? So, go on. If you look like you had something.
Yeah, no, I've got stacks of stuff to say. I'm just going to start off with. So you're right. So I've been teaching in further education since 2010. So I don't actually have much contact with the students in further education now because I teach their teachers.
Perfect.
But someone's got to do it. But for about 13 years, I was in the classroom every day with 16 to 19-year-olds, mostly lads, because I was teaching sport. It was mostly 16 and 17-year-old lads, some girls as well, but mostly young men. And I remember one of the students asking me, we used to have some good conversations, and as you know, that age range, happy to talk. They're interested in all sorts of things, despite what the usual, what people usually think about 16-year-olds. They're happy to have a conversation about just about anything. And one of the questions was, what's the problem with my generation? I mean, there's one particular lad, whose name I won't mention for safeguarding reasons, who basically said, "Can you tell me what you like about our generation, and what are the problems of our generation? Like, what's wrong with us? What's good about us?" Which I thought was a really interesting question. So I'll start you off with my answer. I said that I'll start with the positives. I said, and I still think this is largely the case, that generation coming up behind the 20-somethings now is a generation that has, because they've been taught it, is genuinely invested in one another's well-being. They genuinely care about one another. I think they're misled as to what that's supposed to look like, and they're misled in terms of what care for another person looks like. But they really do. They really do care about one another. And so that's what I said to this young man in that lesson. So that's on the positive side. And then he was okay. So what's the problem with this generation? And I said, I think that their biggest struggle, just in terms of adjusting to adulthood, is that they are the most distracted generation to come along in a very long time. And I think that is because they have been allowed by their parents, essentially, and their teachers, to inhabit a world that is just chock full of distraction, to the point where a lot of young people struggle to maintain attention for an extended period of time. I don't think that I don't think all is lost or anything like that. I don't think they'll be set in their ways for the rest of their life. But I think because of the way that their education is set up, largely, there are some hints of change within the education sector, which is a positive thing. But over the last 5 to 10 years, certainly, that we must have Chromebooks for every child. We must have iPads for every child. We give them a phone and all these sorts of things has meant that they have just not developed the habits of attention. They've not developed the ability to maintain attention on a single thing for any more than a few minutes. Again, I think that's reversible. I think it doesn't actually take much to reverse that. But it won't happen if they're constantly just bombarded with notifications and like dopamine hits from their devices repeatedly.
That's interesting. I'm not sure how easily reversible it is. I'm not sure. I don't think it's irreversible.
Yeah.
I'm just not sure how irreversible it is.
Okay.
In terms of attention span reading would be a good measure of whether one can hold one's attention on something. And again, you might know more of this from your work. Lots of people in universities that I speak to, they don't even bother setting books for people to read anymore.
Correct. Yeah.
Because they can't.
Yeah.
They can't. They just won't, or they can't follow a whole thread of an argument from a book, from start to end. And if you can't,
so that is true.
When you're young, that's a hard discipline. Well, I don't. For me, anyway. Like what I find hard about my life now is having time to read,
right?
And making time to read. So it has to be done when I'm tired. And if you haven't learned to enjoy reading and to be able to read for extended periods of time when you're young, when you have the time to develop that habit, I think it's very hard to develop it. When you're older.
So I would say I largely agree with you that it's hard to develop that habit, but I don't think it's impossible.
Agreed.
I think the first thing that needs to happen is there needs to be a will for that young person to get off their devices. And I honestly, I don't think I've seen some data, and I can't call it to mind or anything like that, but I've seen some data that does suggest, especially that age range, where there's all sorts of what's known as synaptic pruning going on. That is, their brains are rewiring constantly, and it happens. There's certain points in time through their development where this synaptic pruning happens lots, and sort of 16 to 20 is one of the key time frames. In that time frame, there is an opportunity to undo some of the potential damage. So I think getting them off their devices, I don't think it will take very long for them to reset and develop some better habits. I don't think, for example, if like you say, it is true that at university, so I work at a university now, and I'll set readings. Some of them will do it, some of them won't do it. Some of them won't do it because they don't have time. Some of them won't do it because they'll tell me they just can't read. There'll be, that does happen. They would say, well, I just can't read stuff, so I don't read it. I'll get ChatGPT or whatever it's called to read it for me and summarize it for me.
It can turn it into a conversation between two people and all sorts.
Indeed. Yeah. And there's lots of that sort of stuff going on, which we'll talk about at some point. But even for those people, I don't think it would take long if they would just set aside the distractions. I don't think it would take more than a few weeks, honestly, for them to get themselves out of being completely frazzled by the constant dopamine hits. I think their bodies are robust enough to reset those kinds of habits.
Interesting. I'd love that to be true.
Yeah.
I'm not sure actually that would be the case for and then it might lead into the second thing, because I think one of the big issues is purpose. And I think you might have more success with this change of attention span if young people feel there is a purpose to it.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
And so I think purpose is hugely lacking in this generation. And it doesn't mean none of them are trying to do things or anything like that, but there is a general almost despair or nihilism or something. And this goes back to, I'm not actually blaming them for all of this.
No, not at all.
I think they look at the situation they're in, the hand they've been dealt,
absolutely,
the state of the country, the finances, and they look at it and think, they literally think, what's the point?
Yeah, I totally agree. I have very little kind of, there is some responsibility on the young person, but because by virtue of the fact that they're young people, actually the majority of the responsibility is on their parents and upon their educators, their teachers, upon the society around them to provide for them some purpose and some meaning. And I think that has been eroded. I think basically what we've said is the generations that have gone ahead of them have said, what we're going to do is we're going to get great jobs and we're going to make loads of money and have a brilliant car. From the 80s and 90s, we're going to have a great car and a great house and so on. And the possibility of that now has been taken away.
Yes,
because the economic situation that the UK is in, the likelihood of a young person who's 20 getting on the house. I mean, I think I read recently. I might have dreamt this, but I think I read recently that the average age of a first-time homeowner has now passed 40. Mm-hmm. So they're over 40 now for getting on the property ladder for the first time. And so it's completely understandable that young people would look at that and think, well, I've been told, and people come to my school and they sell me these dreams, and they say, if I just work hard and do this, then. And the problem is the whole of society it maybe was once, but it's no longer set up to reward hard work and effort. And so the purpose then for those who are not Christians particularly, but for anybody, to look at the society and to have been told this is how it all works. If you do this, this will follow, and if you do this, then you'll end up here. To find that that's not true, it means really because the economy's not getting fixed anytime soon. Mm-hmm. It means, I'll come back to that in a second. It means, I think, that the solution has to be a spiritual solution, because purpose, we've been missold the idea of purpose as an economic dream. If you do this, you'll win big. Establish these habits, work hard at school, and so on. Put your money aside and be savvy, and so on. Then you'll end up being affluent. And it seems to me society is not really set up that way anymore, or certainly it's far less likely that I think the probability that if you work hard that you'll be successful is kind of tanking, and so young people see that, and so the only real recourse I think we have in the current state of play is that we need our young people to be returning to the Christian faith, basically, as I'll do this because it's good. I'll do this because it's a beautiful thing to do. I'll do this because it's meaningful in and of itself, because God calls me to do it. So going back to things like vocation, not just necessarily doing a job, but having a vocation, and though that kind of way of thinking that maybe feels a little bit traditional, but actually, the traditions of becoming an apprentice and learning a trade and developing a range of skills for its own sake, to bless the society around you. I think we need to kind of return to those sort of virtues rather than continuing to peddle what is basically the lie, that if you just work hard at school, you'll end up rich and have a nice car. Yeah. I think the kids just see through that. It's because it's obviously not true.
Yeah, and this is really interesting. But I think, and I agree that the spiritual is essential, because actually it makes all of life understandable and worthwhile, and even the most seemingly menial thing can be of eternal significance if it's done by a believer out of love and obedience to the Lord Jesus Christ. But there is an ordinariness to history that young people feel is now out of their grasp.
What do you mean?
So having somewhere to live as a family with children, let's just take like having an ordinary job, having an ordinary family, and having somewhere to live with that family feels unattainable. So this young woman I was talking to at work, she's a university graduate, very clever, very articulate, spent over a year constantly looking for work as a full-time job. Just get nowhere. Got to the point where certain jobs you take your degree off you, off your CV. Certain jobs you put it back on. Just not. And like she's been working for me since July or something like that. But she's been with me a while. She's every now and then she'll get an agency in touch with her to say, we've now allowed you onto our pool of people we might allow to get some work.
Right.
6 months after.
Yeah. Yeah.
After applying, and she said, out of all of her peers, nobody is thinking of starting a family in the next 10 years.
Right.
And they're all early 20s. Like it's just not even on their radar. So the only people who seem to be thinking about starting families are the mental people like me, who would just do stuff anyway.
Yeah.
Or sort of the very irresponsible.
Right.
Who will be caught in some way by the safety net of the welfare system.
Yeah.
Or the very well off. Which seems so wrong, because we're encouraging, like, we want to encourage people, go to the ordinary things of life and find deep satisfaction in them. Find deep satisfaction in work. Find deep satisfaction in reading and books. Find deep satisfaction in conversation and enjoyable time spent in the physical presence of someone else. Find deep satisfaction in marriage, in having children, in raising children. And so much of that is now feels beyond their reach. I think it leads into this. Well, maybe I should just spend some more money on Fortnite skins because, like, it's literally not going to make a difference. If I save these bits of money, maybe I'll be able to get a 30-year mortgage when I'm 48.
Yeah.
And I might die before I pay off. So, like, I know people my age who've got mortgages until their 70s.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, which even that feels crazy. And then you got the generation who were 22 looking at them thinking that's unattainable. Yeah. So, and I'm not wedded to mortgages. You know what I mean? Like, we rented for years, and that's I thought I'd rent all my life. It's not that owning a house is the key to having a family, but rent is becoming increasingly crazy. Like, even in Bradford, most of the city is just a dump. Yeah. Yeah. Our first house we moved to here was like a 3, maybe even 4-bedroom, tall terraced house. It's over like 4 floors. It costs like £425 a month to rent it. That's doubled since we moved here, at least. Right. And salaries haven't doubled in that time, and everything else has got more expensive. So even if salaries have gone up by a good bit, it's not even close to covering all the inflation in food and fuel and stuff like that. So it feels really, I actually do feel sorry for them. Yeah, same. Yeah. So, and I think there's something on the generations that have gone before that they actually need to take onus and responsibility for. Now, what this actually looks like, I don't know, because you get people like our parents' generation, and they, on the whole, a lot of them were hardworking, diligent. They were sold a scheme, and they bought into it. They were told, if you work and you pay in, this is what you'll get out when you retire. If you get a mortgage, then you'll pay it off by the time you're 50 odd, and then that'll help your retirement, and then they did all that. And I don't blame them for living sensible, ordinary lives, but something has happened where that generation, and maybe the generation slightly below it, but particularly that generation, seems to have sucked up all the wealth into some sort of Ponzi scheme, which has to collapse at some point. Because, and it's funny, because people are like, but I paid into a pension all my life. And it's like, I'm not blaming you. You did what you were told to do. You were told, but like, that money isn't sitting in a pot. The national insurance contributions you made for 35 years don't go into an account with your name on it, waiting to be paid back to you when you retire. they've all been spent. And the money that's going to you is coming from the people who are currently in work. And the people who are currently in work are getting taxed more heavily and have less disposable income than the people who are retired. And the retired people are getting their money from the contributions of the people. That is unsustainable. And so I don't know how to fix that, and I don't want to blame the individual person who's in their 70s, who worked hard all their life, was told that this is the system and this is what they've got, but we've ended up in a system that is like doing young people over. Something awful.
It's unsustainable for two. I think two kind of big reasons. There's multitude, no doubt. One is that the number of retired people is ever greater because people are living longer and having longer periods of time in retirement. So that's the one thing. But the other thing is the amount of people who are paying into the pot. You mentioned like the 30-somethings. The proportion of working age people that are actually paying into the pot is shrinking because the welfare budget is increasing. Because there are more and more people who are not participating in the economy, for want of a better phrase, who don't work, some of whom can't work, and that's fine, but large proportions of people who could be working who are not working. But again, like you get more of what you subsidise. You know, if you make, I know of. It might sound ridiculous, but having worked with young people, I know of young girls whose plan is to have some kids and make the state pay for them, so she doesn't have to work. I know of kids like this. I've worked with them, whose whole, because of their background and so on, and they've seen it done, and it can be lucrative,
and they've run the numbers.
And it makes numerically, it's been subsidised. It makes rational sense.
I've met them as well. I remember particularly one vivid encounter with a young girl who was in our youth club at Loughborough. And it was the nice thing about living in Loughborough. It's a small enough place that you bump into people, and they saw me in the rushes, and they were like, "Oh, hi," and you're chatting. What's your? Oh, I'm going to get pregnant. Because my friend did it, and she got right to the top of the list for the house. And like, she didn't have a boyfriend. She was just looking for a guy. She was good. The plan was to find a guy to get her pregnant. Then she'd have a kid. Then she'd jump up the housing ladder, and then that was her career path. And it's so depressing.
It is depressing.
And so you do get more of what you subsidise, and I think there is a mix. There are a number of people who are just on the make. And who've been told, and this is where the therapeutic sort of mind comes in. They've been told that everything else is the reason why they can't succeed. And so they've just completely succumbed to it and said, well, maybe everything is someone else's fault. And maybe I should be looked after by someone else. So I think that they exist. Well, I've met them; they're out there. But also, what do you do with these young people who are trying? They've knocked on 400 businesses, given CVs to everyone they know. They've emailed thousands of companies, and they can't even find a job, let alone start to build some sort of independent life.
It does seem to me to be in the UK broadly a kind of a bit of a despair, a despondency. We feel to me more so than any, or maybe it's just me getting into my mid-40s. Maybe that is just the long and short of it. But there does feel to be a despondency around the nation at the moment. And when you look at the political class in particular, there was obviously we've had a long period of time with the Conservatives in government, and then obviously they were kicked out, and now we've got our Labour government. It just feels like there's no difference. It feels like the political class don't really know what they're doing, don't really have any solutions, and that they are just boats on the tide like the rest of us. They're just pretending to be in charge. That's how it feels.
I like George Galloway's depiction of like they're two cheeks of the same backside.
Right. Okay.
There's really no difference between them, and they're
Yeah.
not really going to lead to anything good.
Sure. Yeah.
And I tend to, for years, I sort of thought that was your analysis was sort of right, that there's just a level of out of touch incompetence to them that is just embarrassing.
Yeah.
But these days, I lean towards actually there's something steering it.
Right.
I don't think you get this level of great destruction without that being the goal at some point.
So I'm obviously not going to let that go. So you're going to have to, because that could be that something steering it could mean just about anything. Yeah. So are you saying? Because I know you've got a bit of a conspiratorial bent to you, Stephen. So are you saying that there is some kind of spiritual power, or some kind of demonic power that's running the show? Are you saying that the sin of the people has brought about a kind of a malaise across the nation? Explain to me what you mean.
I'll take all of the above.
Okay.
Yeah. So I do think that behind the earthly rulers are spiritual battles. We see this in the book of Daniel. I think we see it in other places in the scriptures that the earthly kingdoms are not just made up of flesh and blood people. And I'm not a post-millennialist, so I don't think that time is over, which is what some people think.
Okay.
That since Christ has risen from the dead and he's conquered all the principalities and powers, and now basically Satan's bound, and the powers can no longer influence the kingdoms. I just don't think that's the case. For my evidence, I would submit the world. And just look at it. Like and so I think there are demonic powers there, but I don't think they're the only powers. I think there are angelic powers, and I think the Church of God has power, and the prayers of the church affect what happens in a nation as well as what happens in the church and in individuals. So there's a real spiritual war going on, and I don't think even a lot of Christians are aware that that's what's actually happening. And so that's something that is, if you like, behind the scenes. But power is given to it by the behavior of citizens. So I think that the deeds of a nation can open a nation up to worse oppression.
Okay.
So things like murder, unpunished murder brings God's judgment on a people. Open rejection of God as the creator and giver of good things leads to God's judgment on a people. So certain actions.
Which of the prophets is it that talks about they break out and blood touches blood? Which of the prophets is that?
I can't remember.
Okay. But that's what we're talking about, right? We're talking about the judgment of God upon a nation that is in rebellion.
Yeah, and we know that, like from the first murder, that blood cries to God for justice. That's what the blood of Abel cried out to God, and God heard it, and God acted on it. It was one of the reasons why the children of Israel were able to displace the inhabitants of the land of Canaan, because of their sin, and they weren't in a particular covenant relationship the way the nation of Israel was with God, and yet as nations they were judged and punished for their corporate actions, particularly the slaughter of innocents, the mistreatment of the poor, injustice, and sexual deviation. And those things brought the judgment of God on them, even though they weren't in like a covenant relationship, but they were still recognized by God as a nation. And so I think countries like ours, who on the whole refuse to give God thanks for the goodness that he's bestowed on us, because that's where Romans 1 starts. Recognizing him not as God and neither being thankful, God gave them over. So that's a national sin the lack of giving thanks. Then we have our abortion, horror, and then what seems to be coming in is the euthanasia aspect. But I think one thing that a lot of Christians are not willing to admit is the unpunished murder that happens, not just of babies, just of human beings. Like murder is a capital offence, and the capital punishment should be an option. It doesn't have to be meted out in every circumstance. We talked previously about manslaughter and murder, and there should actually be a level of mercy in the law. That's also commanded in the Old Covenant with God's people. But the standard price for murder is that the life of the murderer should be taken, and we have not done that for more than the whole of my lifetime.
That's in the Noahic covenant, isn't it?
It is, which is still in effect.
It is, yeah.
And so for those who are not sure what we're referring to, when God made a covenant with Noah when he came out of the ark, God said, and like the terms of the covenant are clear, while the earth remaineth, springtime and harvest, summer and winter shall not fail, I won't flood the world again. We all believe that. Yeah. We all believe God will not send a worldwide flood again. We all believe that the seasons will continue until the dissolving of all things. But part of that covenant is, if man sheds blood, by man shall his blood be shed. Yeah. And so we are still under that covenant, and yet we are disobeying that covenant as a nation.
Yeah, here are those verses, Stephen. So Genesis chapter 9, God blessed Noah and his sons, and said unto them, Be fruitful and multiply and replenish the earth, and the fear of you and the dread of you shall be upon every beast of the earth, and upon every fowl of the air, and upon all that moveth upon the earth, and upon all the fishes of the sea. Into your hand are they delivered. Every moving thing that liveth shall be meat for you, even as the green herb have I given you all things. But flesh with the life thereof, which is the blood thereof, shall ye not eat. And surely your blood of your lives will I require. At the hand of every beast will I require it, and at the hand of man. At the hand of every man's brother will I require the life of man. Whoso sheddeth man's blood, by man shall his blood be shed, for in the image of God made he man.
Yep. And that covenant is still in force.
That's right.
Over the whole earth today.
That's right.
And we are disregarding it. We're disregarding it also often with the dietary aspect of it. But in particular, we refuse to put murderers to death. And that accumulation of injustice calls out to God for judgment. And we tend to think, judgment means what happened to Sodom, like the fire and brimstone falling. But judgment looks like what we have now: rampant sexual sin, despair, social breakdown, lack of cohesion, racial animism, all the things that are sort of generational animism, animosity. With like what the younger generation abusing the older generation disregarding the younger generation. These are the symptoms of our national sins, and what they do is they weaken and give space for demonic entities to come in and take more power. And so that is what I think is happening behind the scenes of the governments, are evil spirits which are influencing national decisions. Now, they may be doing it through other men, and that's my suspicion. I don't think the caliber of the people we have in charge lead me to think that they're really behind anything. They seem to be vacuous, empty vessels. But occasionally you will get actually they're basically taking orders, or someone's giving them a script to work from. And so I do think there is, and I don't need to know the details, but there is some malign spiritual force that is pushing our country on the whole in a dark direction. Sure.
So I'm really interested in this. I can see where this has come from the scriptures in terms of, particularly in the book of Daniel, the Archangel Michael fighting and so on, with the Prince of Persia. So the Prince of Persia, this idea, it seems to make sense what you're saying, that the Prince of Persia is some kind of angelic being, possibly a fallen angel, but certainly some kind of spiritual being that has some kind of power over that nation, almost as a representative of that nation in some regard. So my question is this: because I haven't really thought this through very much, because it's quite peculiar, frankly, but I'm happy to think it through. Are you suggesting that every nation has an angelic, fallen or otherwise, prince? So when we're talking in the New Testament, we talk about principalities and powers. Is Paul affirming this idea that each nation, England, Scotland, where is there a Prince of England? Is this what you're saying? There's a Prince of Scotland. There's a Prince of Wales. Would you say that? And if that is what you would say, how are all of them fallen? Are every nation in the entire world governed in some regard or in some way by a fallen being?
Yeah. So there's a lot of conjecture. Not a lot of conjecture. There's some things we know for certain. But some nations in the past had a direct spiritual being, either good or evil. So, for example, Michael was the angel of the children of Israel, assigned to that nation. Like you say, from Daniel, but also from Ezekiel, the prince of Tyre. The other nations have, what seems to be quite clear.
Yeah. So Tyre's a city, though, isn't it? So yes. Are we talking about? So we're expanding this. We're talking about there are angels or demonic spirits that have power over cities, and some over countries, and some over regions.
That's what it seems to me.
Okay.
And this is, and if we think of this as a battleground, nothing is ever fully static. So there is a real war going on in the world. That is unseen, but it is played out with the physical realm. So it's played out with kings and rulers and governments and magistrates and judges and parish councillors and mayors and families, like the whole the spiritual forces.
All the authority structures.
Yeah,
is that what we're talking about?
Yeah, it'd be weird to think, and again, the New Testament language, like you were saying, principalities, powers, it's of a structured government. Like there is a spiritual hierarchy. There are some angels which are clearly more powerful than other angels. Some angels have to call for reinforcements to fight other angels. If we talk about angels, fallen and unfallen. So there's a battle going on, and I'm happy with that there are spiritual forces that represent kingdoms, but also places, and also people. They're often very much associated with individuals, and so I'm happy that situation is still in effect, but with challenges to it. So angels are real, like good angels.
Yeah.
And the church is everywhere in the world now, and angels are ministering spirits sent particularly to minister to the church. And so if the prayers of the church are particular for a country, and the life of the church is real and vibrant, I'm happy to believe that the dark spiritual forces of that country can be overthrown, at least temporarily.
Right.
And sometimes for a lot. And so I would give, as example of this, like the prayer of William Tyndale upon his martyrdom. God opened the eyes of the King of England. Now, I don't think necessarily that means that Henry VIII was a saved man, but the prayer of that wonderful saint, actually God answered and opened his eyes enough to allow him, not just to allow him, but to make him say that there would be an English Bible in every church in the country. Like that's a spiritual victory for the forces of good. In a time when it looked like evil was triumphing.
Yeah.
And so that's what I mean by the spiritual. And I don't think that is just human William Tyndale, human Henry VIII. And God is just doing like magic clicking of his fingers to make certain things happen. That's not how God works his things out in the world when it comes to human affairs. when God wants to do something, when God wants to bless someone with food, he doesn't usually do the cruse of oil thing. He usually sends rain and sun and expects someone to do some work. He usually blesses someone with something and expects them to pick up their bread and take it to a neighbor and give it to someone else. He expects someone to take their phone and send a bank transfer to a missionary society who needs it. God works through men in the working out of his good will in ordinary life. And it seems to me to be, from the book of Job, exactly the same in the spiritual realm.
Okay.
Like this war of principalities and powers is played out behind what we see in a very, very real way.
Okay, that's really interesting. I've got lots more questions about this. Let me ask one then, and this will relate to, I think you've already kind of alluded to the fact that the post-mill approach might be slightly different. The Great Commission, basically, it says this. The 11 disciples went away into Galilee, into a mountain where Jesus had appointed them. When they saw him, they worshipped him, but some doubted. And Jesus came and spake unto them, saying, All power is given unto me in heaven and in earth. Go ye therefore and teach all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Ghost. What did Christ mean when he said, All power is given unto me in heaven and earth? And how does that shift what we're saying? We can see in the opening of the book of Job, for example. How does it shift the relationship of principalities and powers to the physical realm? Is that relationship shifted as a consequence of the cross and the resurrection? Because it seems to me that what Jesus is saying here, when he says all power is given unto me in heaven and earth, he's saying he's saying that in distinction from how things were previously. And of course we know that Paul talks about Satan, about the devil being the prince of the power of the air. So there's and we've talked in a previous podcast about the fact that we don't believe that Revelation 20 means that Satan is currently bound. So Satan is not currently bound, and at the same time Jesus has all power in heaven and in earth. How do those things in the New Testament era, if you believe we're in such a thing, how does that compare to how these things worked out in the Old Testament? Is there a distinction? What is the difference between how these things happened in the book of Daniel, in the book of Job, versus how things happen in our experience now as New Testament Christians?
Yeah. And I love where these things go, because we're way off where we started.
Yeah,
which
I've got a way to bring it back in a minute. So, but carry on answering that question first.
I look forward to hearing that. So this is where I'm at with it all. So I'll try with an illustration to describe the way I think it's all working out in terms of, because again, what I want to do is take seriously the words of Jesus in the Great Commission, but I also want to take seriously everything else that the Apostle Paul says, and it's in the New Testament, in 2 Corinthians, I think, where Paul says, talk about the devil, who the God of this world hath blinded their eyes. Mm-hmm. That's post the Great Commission. Mm-hmm. The God of this world, at the time of Paul writing 2 Corinthians, so we're talking decades after the ascension of Jesus, the God of this world is still the devil, at least in some sense. Mm-hmm. So, and because I don't believe AD 70 is this end of the, as some people might say, oh, well, AD 70, that's when Satan stopped being the God of this world. Yeah. That seems such a facile distinction to make to me. That the destruction of the Temple of Jerusalem would end. Like, I could understand you saying it at the cross or the resurrection or even the ascension. That's the point where Satan stopped being the God of this world. But 2 Corinthians for me is going to stop that as an interpretation. So we have Christ's claim to have all authority being given unto him, and the real effect of Satan being active in the world. There's still being principalities, so they are powers that rule powers, and again, the New Testament power is one with authority. In Romans 13, the powers that be are ordained of God.
Yeah.
So you have these powers, and so the way I think about it is that Christ in his resurrection put them all to shame, to an open show, made a mockery of them, and he triumphed over them in his cross, and God gave him all authority and power. But the illustration I give is if you have two kingdoms next to each other, and they're previously at war, and the prince of one kingdom marries the heir of the other kingdom, and in doing so gets full rights and authority to that kingdom. So that prince is now has all power and authority in that kingdom. But if he walked into certain parts of that kingdom, it would not be instantly recognized by the people who were there, because they're still following their rulers, their local rulers, their national rulers, even though they don't have the legitimate authority in that place anymore.
Yeah.
And so Christ at any point could say, all of this is mine. I have all the authority and you will bow to me. And that's what will happen when he returns, because it is already his. He's coming to claim the earth that he already has the authority to do so.
Sure.
But the reason he hasn't done that yet is because he's gathering a bride to himself, rescued from that nation. And the gospel is the declaration of this time of grace where you can choose to bow the knee to the man to whom all authority is given. Or when he comes, he will break you like a potter's vessel and you will bow the knee then. The authority hasn't changed. It's just, when does Christ choose to exercise his lordly authority over the nations of the earth? At the moment, he's not choosing to exercise it in that federal, in that top-down way. He's sending his emissaries in and saying, look at, basically, I'm in charge now. And it doesn't look like it, but I am in charge. Yeah. So you can either swear your allegiance to me now, and when I come, you'll be glad you did.
Yeah. It's very much King David and King Saul.
Yes.
David was anointed.
Yeah, that's a really good illustration.
He was anointed as the king. He was proclaimed to be the king. And yet there's this kind of period of time where David the king is on the run, and Saul is hunting him down and so on. And people come to David and join themselves to David. It's very much the same sort of thing we're talking about here. Now is the opportunity that the king has been anointed, if you like. Jesus has been anointed. David has been anointed. And now it is time to join yourself to him, so that when Saul is finally deposed, when he falls on his sword, and his bowels gush asunder, and all the rest of it. Just putting two things together for you there to riff off of. That in that day, when the kingdom becomes David's, when the kingdom becomes Christ's, those that have already become he's already their captain, to use the language of Hebrews. They will then be in the position to take the kingdom, as it were, to dwell in the kingdom in its fullness. So that is, from a premillennial perspective, my view is that that's a very good way of thinking about where we are now. David has been anointed, but he's not yet sitting on the throne in the place where he will finally reign. So Christ has been anointed in that sense. He is the chosen king. He is the one that will rule and reign. But he's not yet ruling and reigning over all that he will eventually rule and reign over.
And over all that he has the right already to rule and reign over. Indeed.
Well, that's the anointing. He is the anointed king.
But we see what people at AML, post-mill people hear some of the things we've said, saying, you're saying he doesn't have the right to it.
Right. That's not what we're saying.
He does have the right to it. It's a question of when is he exercising his right to rule in a certain way over those people. because there's no doubt, like Christ has all the power. He can't he's Almighty God for a start.
Right.
He could say a word and every evil spirit would be bound in everlasting chains forever, and there wouldn't be anyone left to deceive the nations and do all that sort of stuff. But he hasn't chosen to do it. Like whichever scheme you follow, he hasn't chosen to do it yet. At the very least, if you're Post Mill and you think this is a process of slowly capturing things, well, he hasn't done it, has he? Because you've got either way, you've got a Christ with all authority who hasn't chosen to exercise his authority fully over the country that I live in, which is the United Kingdom.
Yeah.
There's no conceivable way anyone can think that he has. So he's either reigning in the heavens in the A-mill system, or slowly it's getting conquered in the post-mill system, or it's fully future in the pre-mill system.
Yeah.
But we're not denying his claim and his right and his authority. We're just saying that actually the reason he hasn't done it is because he's gracious. He's actually given people a time to choose to bow the knee, because you don't want to be the enemies of David when David becomes the king. Like there's a time to pick your side. It's before he becomes the king.
That's right.
And that's where we are now. And it's interesting. And some people might get upset at this. But I'm going to say it anyway. There's a rather interesting expression at the start of Revelation. Revelation chapter 1 and verse 5. And this is when John has the vision of Jesus. I think this is he's not looking into the future. He's seeing Jesus, a vision of Jesus as he is. And he says, and from Jesus Christ, who is the faithful witness and the first begotten of the dead and the prince of the kings of the earth. Now, why doesn't it call him the king of the kings of the earth? That's exactly what it calls him later on when he returns.
Yeah.
The name written on his thigh is King of Kings and Lord of Lords. But here he's called the Prince.
Yeah, that's good.
But he's the Prince with all authority.
Yeah.
But he's not he's not ruling as a king over all the princes, the kings of the earth yet. But he will do. It's not a question of right. It's not a question of power or capability. It's a question of when he chooses to lay his authority down over these people.
Yeah. Amen.
So you were going to bring it back somehow?
So I'm gonna try this. We've kind of gone a bit further away than I was thinking.
We could come back and talk about both of these another time.
Yeah, absolutely. So we started off talking about the state of the nation, our concern for kind of the young people, and what's the point? Why should they try? What's the reasoning? And actually, I mean, this might be slightly peculiar. But then that's me. My thinking went to 2 Kings and chapter 6. So it's the passage. No. So it's Elisha. And it's the bit around the famine in Samaria.
Yeah.
So you've got basically there's a famine. So there's it can be seen as the judgment of God upon the land. And then you've got in verse, so it's 2 Kings 6 and verse 24 says this: it came to pass after this that Ben-Hadad, king of Syria, gathered all his host and went up and besieged Samaria. And there was a great famine in Samaria. And behold, they besieged it until an ass's head was sold for 80 pieces of silver, and the fourth part of a cab of dove's dung for 5 pieces of silver. I mean, that's some good King James right there.
Yeah.
But so it's the nation is in an awful state. They're being besieged. There's a famine. And then what comes next is the argument. Elisha basically has to solve. No, it's not Elisha. It's the king. Has to solve the problem of the 2 women who agreed to boil each other's sons and then eat their sons. So we're talking about serious depravity. We're talking about desperation because of the economic situation, because of the famine and so on. And then when you come to the next chapter, it opens chapter 7 with Elisha turning up. And this is what Elisha says. Then Elisha said, Hear ye the word of the Lord. Thus saith the Lord, tomorrow, about this time, shall a measure of fine flour be sold for a shekel, and 2 measures of barley for a shekel, in the gate of Samaria. And so you've got this, the Lord's prophet pronouncing that God is going to completely, wonderfully, miraculously spin the economy on its head, just completely flip the whole thing in a day. And what I take encouragement from this, that the situation that they were in back then, when the 2 women boiling their sons to eat them, was just in a desperate situation, and yet the Lord had an intention that He would, in a day, He would turn the whole thing on its head. And I'm a short-term pessimist and a long-term optimist. So I think that the Lord has the ability, and has the power, of course, to turn this all round in a very short amount of time. The mess that we see in the nation, in the UK broadly, the wickedness, the sinfulness, he has the ability to turn it around in a moment. And that's what I'll be praying for, because we are in a kind of a perilous situation, but it's within His power. All power is given unto me in heaven and earth. It's within His power to do a great work in the nation, to turn us around, to turn us back to Him. And as a consequence of that, even the economics side of things that we've been talking about, to turn all that around as well. I don't know how it's going to happen, and I'm not prophesying that it will happen.
I was going to ask you that,
but I am saying that it is absolutely within the power of God to do it, and to do it miraculously and profoundly and quickly, as well.
Yeah, and I agree with all of that as possibilities. The other possibility is that He does what happened to Rome,
mm-hmm.
and what happened to Greece,
mm-hmm.
and what happened to Babylon, and allow utter destruction to fall,
mm-hmm.
and scatter the people. And it's quite sobering. But what is clear is that Christians can shine in either of those scenarios. They can shine in the difficult times we're in now. They can shine when God turns the fortunes to good, and they can shine in complete destruction. And I think maybe we should then pick up in the future, like how should you live in the light of where you are now? And in such a way that whatever God sends, you'll be ready to do the right thing, whatever comes. Because that's the hard thing. To live well in prosperity or difficulty or utter destruction.
And I think that might lead us to finally getting round to explaining why this podcast is called Strangers and Pilgrims.
That would be a good idea.
Be a good thing to discuss, I think, at some point.
Yeah, because it instantly resonated with both of us.
Yeah, it did. Yeah, absolutely.
As a title, I think, for these sorts of reasons.
Yeah.
So should we wrap this one up?
Let's finish it there. Yeah.
Let's have a part 2 where we come back to the young people.
Yeah.
Their situation.
Do some solutions.
Yeah. Right. Let's finish then with the last verse of Ephesians. Grace be with all them that love our Lord Jesus Christ in sincerity. Amen.